Hi, I'm Lori Jones, President and CEO of Avocet Communications and host of StrategyCast. Join me and my guests, innovators, disruptors, and visionaries as we explore bold and brave marketing strategies that help you transform, scale, and grow your brand. Our topic today is revenue growth, and my guest, Dionne Mejer, has plenty to say. Dionne is a seasoned sales and tech veteran with over 20 years of experience in services, SaaS, and technology brands. We're going to get into the messy middle of revenue growth and how aligning sales and marketing can simplify your path to success. She'll introduce you to her framework and share insights from her ebook, The Stepped Approach, on driving execution. It's all about being agile, fast, flexible, fluid, and successful. Don't miss these game-changing strategies for your business. And don't forget to check out the most recent issue of the StrategyCast newsletter on StrategyCast.com. Just like this episode, it's full of inspiration and a ton of ideas that will elevate your strategies and marketing know-how.
A competitive edge starts with strategy, and strategy starts with knowing how to develop one. StrategyCast is a leading marketing podcast that serves up strategic insights, trends, and tips to help separate your business from the pack. Tune in weekly as host Lori Jones interviews bold marketing leaders who have priceless wisdom and are willing to share. Each episode explores cutting-edge approaches that have proven instrumental in transforming brands into industry trailblazers.
Welcome to StrategyCast. I'm thrilled to have Dionne Mejer join the show today with Revenue by Design. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here, Lori. You are amazing.
Oh, well, equally so, my friend. We've got so much to talk about. We've got a really, really cool show for you all today. We are talking about unlocking revenue growth in this big, messy middle that happens to be there, just right before and right after you're really trying to launch a brand, launch a company, grow, whatever it might be. Before we dive into that, tell us a little bit more about your journey.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. Thank you. And, I think like all of us these days that have been doing this for a while, our journey is anything but linear. And so for all of us that have had that up and down and all around journey, just God bless all of us that are persevering. And I started 20 plus years ago, and I've been in sales and technology ever since. So professional services, hardware, software, you name it, predominantly in this services space, SaaS and tech. So that's my background in a nutshell. So
I love it because we talk so much marketing on the show, which is it's the ethos of
yes.
of really our brand and what we do as an agency. But one of the things that really interested me about having you on the show, and hence why we're calling it Unlocking Revenue Growth, is the importance really between the sales and marketing.
Yes.
And they can have their own messy middle if
100%.
they're not talking together. And a lot of times they're not. So marketing is trying to figure out the messy middle from one aspect. Sales doesn't really have that kind of vernacular. They're just looking at things and saying, guess what? It's not working.
Right.
What do you have to say to those teams who are in the throes of trying to figure this out?
Oh man, so much. And I think we've all been there, right? There's the phrase that says, if I want to go far, I go alone. Or if I want to go fast, I go alone. If I want to go far, I go together.
Right.
And as somebody who's been in the corporate world for a very long time, not to say I'm ancient or anything, but back in the day, a lot of the technology that exists today didn't even exist. Even when I went to market 9 years ago, the structure of today, from a company perspective, the go-to-market team as it's structured today didn't exist 7 years ago. Marketing ops, rev ops, sales ops did not exist the way it exists today. I think first and foremost, we need to really have that perspective, number one.
Right.
Number two, sales longevity-wise has been around since biblical times. Make your number or perish.
Right.
It never changes. So the motivation of a sales team is very different than that of literally anybody else, right? You make your number or you're fired.
Right.
And so I've got a friend, he had a number to hit, and he was larger organization relying on his recruitment team to help him staff his sales team, right? Which is fine.
Right.
The thing is that if recruiting doesn't hit their recruitment number, they don't get fired. Salespeople do. So
Right.
I always share a little bit of context. Number one. So I think from driving alignment perspective, it's imperative and important to recognize the motivation behind the team.
Right.
What is everybody's purpose and North Star?
Mm-hmm.
From there, you can have a really great tactical conversation on who does what, where, with how many jelly beans.
Yeah, I agree. And that takes great leadership. And the recognizing that there is, and it doesn't always have to be an issue,
Correct.
but it just has to be something to solve. It could be it could be a problem to solve. It could be, we need to capitalize on what's going really well and do more of it. I mean, they're all
Yes.
sorts of reasons
100%.
that we ultimately get to that alignment. But if we back up for a second, what do you see is the root cause of this messy middle with the hundreds of different companies that you've consulted
Yep.
with? What do you find is most common there?
Yeah. The messy middle comes when we have structure at the beginning and we have structure at the end. We have not identified structure and milestones and specifics in the middle.
Right.
So, for example, companies will say, we're doing a new product launch, and this is where maybe marketing and your PR team work together, and they've got this amazing plan to do this product launch. And they've got, again, milestones, clear dates, right? All that good stuff. And then we know at the end, we want to see these numbers, we want to see these metrics move, all that good stuff. That middle part of we launched, what do we do next?
Yeah.
It's the specifics in the middle that always trip us up.
And we're going to talk about how we can ease that up in just a minute. And in studying for our discussion today, I did a bunch of research on the messy middle. And a lot of our audience are within startups, middle stage companies. And I just want to reassure everyone that it does not matter if you're an enterprise company, a startup, middle stage, early stage. Every company is dealing with the messy middle. There's a recent article out there, Google, their insights team was trying to figure out really what it is, what's the shopping behavior, what causes people to want to buy. So they observed hundreds of hours of shopping tasks with 310 individual journeys. And guess what they found out? There was no common thread at all. That's what we're dealing with here.
Yeah, it's not easy.
Because every customer is so different, because every sales approach is very different, because it needs to be customized. That is why the messy middle exists.
Yeah.
And the importance of what we're going to share today is really diving into what you can do to ease the pressure up so that it's at least a little bit more of a smooth transition to a positive outcome instead of something that is just intertwined. And I'm using my hands right now because I've got a visual that I just looked at of two different points and just all these lines happening in the middle that Google shared as a part of their research. And they said, this is what we found out. It's just absolutely a mess. Okay.
Yeah.
So as we dive into that, you've got a framework. Give us a quick overview of the framework, if you would, and then we're going to dive into each area.
Yep, absolutely. So the framework that I have that I'm going to share with you is also found in my book called The Stepped Approach. And it's really about systematizing and giving ourselves as an organization, as individuals, a structure framework, kind of setting the container. So when we think about rolling out, or for lack of a better term, teaching at the end of the day, what we want to think about is when we are delivering, the framework we want to use is intro, teach, and apply. Because a lot of times, and I do this too, where we don't necessarily set the container. We don't always think about going to our teams and treating it as a quote unquote sales call. I encourage a lot of my companies and leaders that I coach to treat it that way is to show up and communicate with your team how you want your team to communicate with the outside world. It's a thing, right? We
Oh,
want to mirror.
and that is where so much misalignment happens,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
It's where communications needs to be listening to sales and
Yes.
sales saying, this is what we're hearing. And certainly communications can go in and back it up. Marketing teams
Yes.
go in and back it up and do some additional research, so on and so forth. But is that really where you feel the misalignment happens?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
100%. So many times from a leadership perspective, I hear this all the time. I told my team,
Mm,
oh man, we're adults.
yeah.
We are not children, and nobody likes to be told.
Right.
And especially from adult learning theory, which is now a lot of, if you're lucky enough to have an L&D or even just somebody who is interested in really learning how to shape a team, adult learning theory, change management. As adults, we learn by doing, and we need to be part of the solution. We
Right.
do not learn by being told.
Yeah. So you've got the mind map for teaching, which
Yep.
is intro, teach, apply. And then the
Yep.
mind map for learning, which you're talking
Yep.
about, which
Yep.
is learn, create, execute.
100%. Yep. 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 So we want to be able to, as a leader, show up and say, we're going to introduce a new concept to you. We need to treat it like we're getting our team's buy-in. We're not telling people what to do. And then we're going to quickly turn it around because again, as adults, we learn by doing. And for example, maybe it's a new product and we've got new verbiage and great, I want you to go and learn it. Here's a quick, 3-minute video for you to consume. And then we want you to create your own video in return. Right. So learn, create, and execute at the end of the day and be very specific.
Yeah. And
Very specific.
how do they get specific though? Because we all are so close to what we do day in and day out that we tend to communicate too high level. And
Yes.
one thing that we always say, especially, we service a lot of the same sort of clientele that you do. And quite often what we'll say is, okay, we need to speak at a second grade level
Yes.
so that we can at least stop people out of the chute. And then
Yep.
we can get more technical, but that's the human nature side of it. How are you in your coaching speaking to your, the individuals that you're coaching about something similar?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the question I always ask everybody is, does your training answer the unasked questions of your audience?
Yeah. And that's if they get immediately what you're doing.
100%.
Quite often there's messaging out in the marketplace. I'll look at an ad and I just study, advertising is one thing, in longer format, social media, PR, so on and so forth. We get to study it very, very differently. With advertising, whether it be digital, print, TV, you've got such a short time frame in order to entice them. Actually, a lot of social media does too. But all too often, I'll look at something and I'll say, what in the world are they selling? You
Correct.
have
Yep.
no idea.
Mhm.
So quite often, a salesperson, when we're going through a demo on a product, I know what the product might be, but 10 minutes into the demo, I'm like, I'm not following you at all.
100%. Yep. Yep. Yep.
And I think that is where this teaching comes into play. You break it down, giving structure and framework to
Mhm.
the team that puts the CMO in a position that they truly can educate. So in this situation, you identify your initiative. Give us some examples of that.
Yep, absolutely. So it's pretty common for everybody, right? Maybe we're talking about growing revenue. Maybe we're talking about a new product launch. Maybe we're talking about hiring a net new role. Maybe we have an initiative to decrease our customer churn. Maybe we have an initiative for our customer account management team to be treated as a revenue generating team. Where has that idea been? Because they've always been customer facing. So um, it might be increasing different operational efficiencies. Whatever the initiative is, it needs to be short and specific. And to your point, at a fifth grade level and no more than 8 words.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel that one of the areas why this gets so messy is that they're trying to take on too many of these initiatives at one time?
100%. Yeah. I
Yeah.
think like all of us. So for people that are creating the initiatives, we might have a little bit more experience. And in our head, we think it's really easy. And to what we're talking about is we're so far removed sometimes from our frontline teams doing the executing. We don't realize that as we add more than 3 major initiatives, all we're doing is creating whiplash down the funnel,
Mhm.
down to our teams.
Right.
We're going to amplify our voice, we're going to implement a new tool, and we're going to roll out a new product. Holy bananas.
Right.
It's just too much.
Right.
And when I work with executives and even myself, because I'm like, oh, it's totally easy. I have a warped sense of time.
Mhm.
And we don't always think through the very specific steps that are going to happen. And the example I give to people and to executives is think about moving. Now, maybe you're somebody who you hire movers. And
Mhm.
again, you're really far removed from the fact that each individual plate in your cupboard needs to be packaged individually and solely in order to not break.
Ah, such a great visual.
And that typically will get people like, oh, snap, you're right. Like I didn't think about that. And I said the correlation is your sales team, your SDR team, your marketing team, your CS team is literally can only call one person at a time.
Right. As you were walking through that list, I don't know that we've ever been hired by a single client that did not want to increase revenue.
100%.
And I mean, and it could even be a funding stream, but let's face facts. They may not
Yes,
be creating revenue, but it could be a fund. It always surrounds money.
100%.
And I think what happens quite often is that they're not, that is so big. Every single one of these examples that
Mhm.
you included in here ladders up to revenue
It
on
does.
some level.
It does.
And so how do you break down such a I'm gonna use an EOS term for a second. It's
Yeah.
such a huge rock,
Yeah.
to because it's almost too much.
It
Uh,
is.
it just is. So how do you consult with leaders out there about breaking that down and really providing them a realistic point of view on what they can achieve? Because all too often, the revenue goal just is not achievable in the time frame with the confines that they probably don't recognize that they have.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is where it truly is the messy middle, Lori. And a lot of times when I'm talking with leaders, I will share with them, I go, I'm going to guide you through a process that I'm going to guide your sales team through, which is we're going to go 3 questions deep. So for every initiative you have, I'm going to ask you how 3 times.
Right.
We need to increase revenue. Great. How? Oh, we're going to get more customers. Great. How? Well, we're going to have our sales team call. Great. How?
Yeah.
How,
Well,
how, how? Yeah.
and I think that is exactly the conversation we would have getting,
Yep.
the first thing they're going to say is get more customers.
Yep.
But what we also know is that a lot of times the product isn't ready to get more customers.
100%.
They've
Yep.
got negative reputation that's causing them to not be able to get more customers. I
Yep.
mean, a litany of different things that happens, which is where we come in and really strategize and figure out what the big issues are in the market that is causing the lack of revenue growth or what they need to know before a product launch, whatever it might be. But they typically answer the question exactly the way you asked it, and they go to the customer first.
Yep.
How do you, in your consulting, make sure that you're uncovering really the soft underbelly, the true issues that are affecting customer retention, customer acquisition, customer awareness, all these sort of things?
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. Again, a lot of when I engage with folks, I ask all the questions. And it's one of those things where they go, "Wow, Dionne, you're always asking us such great questions." I'm like, "I know, it's amazing." And we even have a mastermind group at Revenue by Design we kicked off earlier this year, and we just met yesterday morning with our executives. And that's exactly it. We turn everything into a question first and foremost.
Yeah.
And the other component in talking with leaders and even teams is a couple of things. One, I always talk about our sales with soul methodology. Meaning there's nothing wrong with making money. If you're a for-profit business, you're kind of supposed to.
Yeah.
However, revenue is a result. It is a lagging indicator. And people, we sometimes forget that because we really like the achievement of sending the invoice, getting paid, and all that good stuff, right? But it's a reminder that revenue, getting paid, is a result of everything that went before it. So, as you can probably surmise, I'm a big fan of perspective and level setting, right?
Yeah.
Like, let's just get our mind in the right spot.
Yeah.
And then to your point, from there, when I talk about sales with soul, which is our methodology, is do we have the infrastructure in place and the strategy, the infrastructure, the tools for our teams to be successful?
Right.
Have we engaged with enablement? Do we have product marketing? Have we done sales enablement sessions with our teams to recognize what's happening? Do we have the right sales journey internally that matches our customer journey? So that's where we go through all these questions, and not to make it sound overly complex and all that good stuff. It's a very simple exercise of if this, then that.
Right.
Great. We want to increase revenue. Who are we calling? Do we have a list of people? Do we know what they want? Have we gotten with marketing to understand the different signals we have? There is so much technology out there that totally invades our privacy. There is no such thing as making an unknowledgeable call.
Right. Oh, I totally agree. How often do you find, you need all these, these insights, these inputs, these key indicators to make intelligent recommendations for a client? How often do you find that they don't have enough of it internally, that you actually end up having to go outside externally? Certainly, the easy one is to talk to customers.
100%.
Really research beyond that, you know, uh, product, are they in problem market fit? Do they still need to remain there, or do they need, are they really ready for product market fit?
Correct.
Or is it that they've got a negative reputation surrounding a couple key personnel or a part of the product, and that's really, causing them not to be able to
Yep.
catapult the growth? I mean, just so many different things.
Yeah.
Review sites. I mean, all these sort of things that you can really find the additional research that's needed. So I guess to rephrase the question, how often do you get exactly everything you need internally versus having to go out externally to back up or find more?
Yeah, I think it's going to depend on the company, right? Because sometimes, and this is where, to your point, the messy middle is different for everybody because companies are made of people.
Right.
And we all have different experiences. We all have different strengths. We all have different thought processes. We all prioritize things differently. And it takes a really mature organization to recognize that to grow and go fast requires structure. And one of the things I share with folks is there's a difference between agile and ambiguous. There's before COVID, money was cheap and it was the growth at all costs. Now we are not in that phase. We are not in that movie, right? And so now we're in a scenario where it is about measured, steady, sustained growth and being smart. And recognizing that there is no overnight sensation, that the only thing that grows overnight is a mushroom. Giant oak trees take years. So if you want to build something sustainable, be the acorn in the oak tree, not mushroom going and growing in manure.
Right.
So I think it just depends. And I think it starts with, the ebook we have for everybody today is that identify, specify, execute book, where when we think about our initiative and there are a list of questions to ask. So to your point, we might be able to start. I don't believe in waiting until you have everything to go. That we're not making a cake where if you don't have eggs, it's not going to turn out. So there's things that can happen in tandem while you're doing other things. So for example, if it's we want to grow revenue or we're going to implement a new tool, we want to ask ourselves, where are we starting, and get specific. So we need to identify, where am I starting? What do I have? Do I already have something in place? What is my change management strategy? Like we need to think about people, process, technology, to use the Drucker terminology, before we start implementing. So identify what's our initiative, what questions do we need to ask, do our information gathering, and then get really specific. And that helps mitigate the issues found in the messy middle.
We're just going to stay with revenue for a second here, because it's such a great example of, I think, every conversation that's taking place in every boardroom across the world right now. And that is, everyone wants to increase revenue. How do you truly understand, as the leader of the pack, what your revenue growth can be if you are a very early stage company or versus maybe an enterprise company?
Yeah, I hate to say it, there's no magic answer in 2024 at this point. It's inspect what you expect.
Right.
I mean, honestly, Lori, so many times as an organization, the cadences aren't being followed, the sequences aren't being followed, customers simply aren't being followed up with.
Oh my gosh, sister. We brought through a series of, great outbound marketing, 35 key prospects to a client.
Mhm.
They didn't follow up with a single one. We're talking
100%.
huge brands, and
Yes.
we find out for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And that's where the rub is. Marketing is being held accountable.
Yeah.
Sales is being held accountable. We give the leads to sales. There's zero follow-up. It got lost.
Correct.
So how can you even, to the point that you made earlier, how can you even say, okay, we need to have revenue be our focus until you get those processes fixed?
100%, and hold people accountable.
Yeah.
And that's it's an age-old thing. And so one of the things that I always recommend to people is I don't care what your title is. I don't care where you think you sit. If you are truly not listening to calls, if you are not out with customers, you do not know your business. If you are managing by spreadsheet, you are doing everybody a disservice. So one of the things we always recommend, one of the activities we always recommend is everybody up and one seat to the left.
Nice.
That is the same for reps in seat. On a side note, empathy is totally overused and misused. Empathy is not compassion. Compassion is feeling for somebody like, wow, that's really awful. Empathy is you actually went through that.
Right.
It's the same thing, right? So yeah. I'm a word nerd, so it really drives me nuts. That being said, that is one of the things, is being able to see what the other person is going through. Maybe the rep isn't going to sit in a boardroom or whatever, or a board meeting, but maybe they should have a glimpse into what it looks like to prepare for a board meeting, or to understand what our executive leadership is going to be asked about in a board meeting.
Right.
There is a gap from our front line to our executive leadership, and there's supposed to be, just like there's a gap between my 15 and 12-year-old and me. However, insight and kind of seeing what that looks like creates compassion for the other person and an understanding that we normally wouldn't have.
Yeah.
So that's a thing where, doing skip level one-on-ones, your VP listening to calls, maybe sitting in on a meeting and vice versa, to really understand and have that front line in-person experience that gives you context for looking at your spreadsheet.
Yeah. You've got some incredible examples here that you ask the team and that you make sure that you've got going into these meetings. Again, staying with revenue as an example. I just brought up one. Where do we want our revenue? How much do we want our revenue to grow by? Where were we successful last year and why?
Yep.
You've got tons of examples here that you moderate with the team. If you want to go through a few more, that's fantastic. How often do you see that the teams are prepared to give you that they've got this information available?
Again, it depends on the team, and it's not always tools either. It really depends on the team. Lori, a lot of times the biggest disconnect is the misalignment.
Right.
Sales enablement or marketing or sales, the three legs of the stool, right? They all have great ideas and they have a great plan.
Yeah.
The problem is the communication back and forth.
Yeah. So segmentation, I think, is really interesting here. And I think marketing feels that they should own segmentation, but sales feels they should own it. Yes. Marketing feels they should own it because they're pushing out the messaging, they're going after the audience, so on and so forth. Sales feel they should own it because it is the customer ultimately that they're trying to drive through and sign the dotted lines. How do you create alignment between those two examples?
Yeah. Well, there's a difference between marketing messaging and sales messaging. And I think that's the thing is if we think one size fits all, I don't think that's an appropriate thought process for us to have because people are unique and different things resonate with different people. So I think it's again setting the context of marketing and sales leaders. And this is where if you have a CRO and marketing and sales roll up to that individual, that helps alleviate some of this. And if not, then your sales leader, your marketing leader really come together and figure out what is our marketing messaging and what is our sales messaging at the end of the day. And again, cross pollinate. And so it's really about when we think about our marketing team and our sales team, how are we bridging the divide? How are we reaching across the aisle to say,
Well,
okay, right, what data are we sharing and how are we using it?
and that's the messy middle of the whole process, right?
100%.
Not to confuse people, but the next part of this all is, getting the dates down. What's the start date?
Yep.
What's the end date? That's where people, I think, start forgetting everything that needs to take place with that alignment before they get there.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with you on that, Lori. And again, that's the easy part.
Right.
One of the things I talk with our teams about and our clients about is creating a project plan. Quite frankly, you can throw dates out there. That's not the issue, right? It's like filling out an invite for a party, the who, what, how, when, where, and why. That is somewhat easy, right? Again, to your point, the messy middle of, and all these questions, well, we want to grow, great. Where are we starting from? Where are we going to? What are our milestones? And quite frankly, who needs to do what, when, where, and why? Marketing is going to do this campaign. And again, I'm using my hands too, right? But if I've got a marketing campaign and a marketing calendar, where's my sales motion tied to it?
Right.
And then not only that, when we are talking about executing any of these initiatives, we do need to think about our report outs. Marketing was going to do this campaign. We saw these results. Sales was picking up this lead and doing these motions. What happened?
Right.
And we need to stop with the finger pointing. And this is where sales enablement comes through on the thread that helps connect the dots. So it's really about what is the communication glue that holds our teams together. And when we work with organizations, we talk about, we have a workshop that we do called when we take sales reps to sales pro and our ambiguous to agile workshops. And in there is 10 irrefutable laws for leaders and 10 irrefutable laws for sales professionals.
Love it.
And what we talk about with them is one of those laws is communicate and collaborate.
Yeah.
And those are verbs.
Yeah.
Verbs. So it's, hey, marketing, you sent out this. I got this lead. Here was the feedback. Maybe come listen to this call with me because I might not be hearing it the right way, but let's listen to it. Okay, sales, you made this call. Did you listen to a call together because you answered a question that the customer didn't ask?
Yeah.
So when we think about that execution piece, we're looking at communicate and collaborate, what metrics, what KPIs, what keywords, getting down to that specific level, and then listening to calls together or going out on meetings together, really doing a debrief, getting specific around those executables.
In this Google study that I was reading, they were able to deduce the messy middle into two distinct categories. One was exploration and the other was evaluation. And if you think about it, it makes so much sense.
Yeah.
And if you can compartmentalize those sort of, everything that you're doing from a marketing and a sales standpoint into those two categories alone, the messaging changes, the interaction change, the way you approach a conversation changes. And it just clarifies so much for not only the teams, but ultimately what the customer, the information that they're being served as well.
100%. 100%, Lori. I think that's brilliant. And I think with that is the sales enablement motion that says maybe our messaging resonated with an individual a certain way. We want to make sure our sales team is enabled in the first few minutes of a dialogue with a client to really discern and confirm whether or not they're in exploration or evaluation.
Right. There's so many incredible insights that you've shared today, and I would be remiss if I did not ask you what kind of insights you're gaining through AI
Yeah.
as maybe a middle ground based on what you're learning in-house, how you might be able to back up some of that with AI, and then ultimately what you're learning direct from the field or the customers or, the market.
Oh, AI, it's
Um,
everywhere. And I think it's a couple of things. It's not going to replace, it's going to enhance.
right.
And I'm a big fan of analogies. It's kind of like we just rewatched Mary Poppins, and in the first one, there's the lamp, or the second one, right? There's a lamplighter, and people were afraid when electricity came around because the lamplighter's job was going to go away. That may be true. However, think about our world today with electricity and the world it's created, the jobs, the infrastructure, and so on and so forth. So I always say, let's not be afraid of anything new.
Mhm.
And it is change, and as humans, we don't like it. But AI isn't going to replace. AI should enhance.
Could not agree with you more. You
It
know,
should enhance. And this is where, too, Lori, I would love your thoughts on this, is from a sales perspective. I would always give my teams as a practitioner a set of keywords. And maybe we got them from marketing. We need to toe the party line too. That's what I get paid for as a sales professional. My job is to sell for my company, right? So it's really about, again, guidelines and structure for our teams to use. And a lot of organizations aren't letting them use public chat GPT, and they shouldn't.
Yeah.
So you got to figure out, are we giving our teams the structure to use AI and use it well?
right. There's a bunch to unpack there. I'm
Oh,
going to bring up one thing regarding, again, the alignment issue and just making sure that people are aligned on and at face value. I mean, a simple tool that we deploy almost with everything is a messaging architecture.
Love that.
The
Yeah.
messaging architecture is, the keywords. It describes the tone of the brand, the key attributes of the brand. But then it's got a 10-letter or a 10-word description, a 20-word description, a 40-word description,
Love that.
elevator speeches that really help. The more alignment, if you have 100 team members and they're each answering the same question differently, it's kind of like playing telephone, right?
100%.
Then how is that enhancing your brand? How is that enhancing your awareness if there's no market consistency, no message, no verbal consistency? It's easy for marketing to push out consistent words, but the verbal piece is what is so tough. So, but we definitely implement that. But we're using, back to the AI question, we're using it a lot. We have in our contract, our customers decide if they want us to use it or not. Certainly from a writing standpoint, but where we're really, we might use the tools to ideate some things, not necessarily write.
Correct. Yeah.
But where we're really using it is for research. So for instance, if we're going into a big meeting or we have a client, for instance, they just Target was just interacting with them regarding a specific topic that we were moving through the funnel. And so we created a dossier for the sales team in this situation. Did a lot of that research on chat. Now, it's important to make sure that there's hallucinations happening left and right. So we back it up with Google and Perplexity and a couple other tools to make sure that it's accurate, which is the key there.
It is.
Nonetheless, we're getting information and saving tons of time with instances like that. And I think that is just one of 100 different examples in our own agency of how we're using chat to really speed up the sales process and gain better insights so that our clients can sell to more people more often too, which is the goal.
I think that's amazing, Lori, and I agree with you. I mean, AI exists for that reason.
Yeah.
Kind of like your dishwasher, right?
Yeah.
It's not gonna replace doing your dishes, it's just gonna make it easier, and I don't have to stand there with my gloves on, right? So, I think if people learn to use AI in their process, it's gonna really be helpful, and it sounds like you figured that out. I love it.
Final words for our audience, and I'd like you also to tell us about the ebook and how
Yeah.
you get a hold of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Final words, I think the question I have for everybody is, how well on a scale of 1 to 10 do your teams understand and implement your initiatives?
Love it.
Yeah.
That is fantastic.
Yeah. Thank you. And, because
That one can hurt too.
it really, yeah, but that, I mean, that's where, I ask a lot of questions.
Yeah.
But that's the beauty of it, right? And we should. I mean, I have colleagues of mine that do the same for me. So, um, and I think the ebook, we have that available for everybody. I think, Lori, did I send you the link? I think I did.
Oh, we're gonna make sure we include the link,
Yeah. Yeah.
the show notes, so you can get the
Perfect.
link there, so you can just click on it and download it. But tell us a little bit about the contents of the ebook.
Yep, absolutely. So I'm a huge functional person. I live in Southern California. I grew up in the Midwest, blue collar military family. So I'm functional to the very bone marrow of my being. So in this ebook, you're going to see examples, but you're also going to see some workbook type things. So it'll show up for you as a presentation. You can take that with you in your meetings. You can use that as a wordsmith, things of that nature for you. So that's what you're going to see in the ebook are different examples, different questions you should ask. And it's functional. You can use it whether you're going to take examples from the book or use it with some of the initiatives you have now. It's all about driving to very, very specific so we can all execute well.
I love it. Thank you, Dionne Mejer, so much for your insights today. They've been fabulous. What is the best way for our listeners to get a hold of you?
Thank you for having me. Best and easiest way is always LinkedIn. I think I might be the only Dionne Mejer on there, but it's LinkedIn. Dionne Mejer.
Mejer, by the way, not like it's
M-E-
spelled Mejer.
Yes, yes, yes. Mejer. Dionne Mejer. I'm on LinkedIn. You can definitely find me there. You can also go to dionnemejer.com. That is my speaking website. You'll see some of the keynotes and workshops that we offer there as well.
Well, we deeply appreciate your insights. Thank you so much, Dionne, for your appearance on StrategyCast. And if you want to get a hold of me, go ahead and email me, Lori, Lori, at strategycast.com. And I'm also on LinkedIn as well, pretty prolific there. And don't forget to sign up for the StrategyCast newsletter at strategycast.com as well. Thank you so much for your appearance on StrategyCast.
Thank you, Lori.
That's a wrap. Thanks for joining us on today's show. We hope your strategic brains are spinning with new ideas and bold inspiration that will elevate your strategies and marketing know-how.